This is Alex Howard, or Alexander Howard as my byline says, at Twitter under Digifile. I'm the associate editor for searchcompliance.com and TechTarget. I should say right now that these views are my own and do not represent those of my employer.
Great. Well, we're doing a Future of the Web interview here at Twtrcon. What are some of the major trends and challenges for social media networks in the next year?
Well, you can see them accelerating. We just had the Pew Internet report that came out and said something like 1 out of every 5 internet users is now on a status updating service. So the major trend is uptake. I think the challenge for Twitter certainly is to keep the users there, to sort of kind of create a better first-time experience, and then to scale. We saw fail whales this past week, so I think the scaling is a major issue there. When you broaden the discussion beyond Twitter, I think there are 3 major issues and challenges, if you will. Identity, privacy, and security. And when it comes to identity, as people are more increasingly sourced, as they increasingly share information, they're going to want to have better solutions around identifying themselves, especially when it comes to interactions with media organizations and government. OpenID is an example of one thing that's been proposed for that. Reported on that a bit. When it comes to privacy, the concerns are outstanding. They've been debated quite a bit. Certainly, the focus that different privacy commissions have brought to it are significant. When it comes to Facebook, there's a lot of controls. Other networks don't have as much. But there are significant, legitimate concerns about the ways that people's online behaviors tie back to their actual identity, especially in real time and real life. Location-based services, as they proliferate, are a major challenge for privacy, and I think that people have to be very thoughtful about where and when they check in or update and how it affects their real lives. And then the final issue is security. Web application security is probably the most important issue. If you go back to the beginning of the year at RSA, and hackers have moved into these different networks. It's not just spam or phishing, but there's actually ways, of course, that they're getting, stealing identities, stealing accounts, and otherwise getting access to people's private information, which they can then do a lot of things with.
Great. So how do you think online ad targeting is going to change in the next year? Do you think one approach is going to start to dominate over the others?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think there's going to be a lot of interest in terms of how the government chooses to regulate it. The FTC's behavioral targeting guidelines are going to have a lot of impact on that. It's true that the advertorial issues that they brought up will as well. In terms of how this is brought about, you can look at the news from this week in terms of seeing at least where one thing is going to matter, and that's how real-time may be targeted by ads. And you see that Google and Microsoft have now signed deals with Twitter, and that's going to move into Facebook as well. So in the same way that you'd see contextual ads pop up around your Gmail messages, now you'll see messages and ads pop up around, potentially down the road, your tweets and Facebook updates. And you can already see that if you experience Facebook. I think Twitter might be a little bit more novel depending upon how they integrate the experience. It'd certainly be interesting if people go over and look at Japan's Twitter site, which has had advertising from the very beginning. So if you want to see what that might look like, that might be one place. Hopefully ads become more useful. They're going to be increasingly auctioned off as Google moves into banners. They're going to be increasingly targeted towards your past behavior and past browsing habits. And there'll be a real challenge going back to the initial issue around identity and privacy, whereby you give away more information about yourself in order to get more useful advertising. That may or may not be something people are comfortable with.
Great. And who do you think are going to be the big winners and losers on the web this year?
On the web? Well, geez, who's gotten acquired? It seems pretty clear that the 3 big networks from the beginning of the year are going to come out pretty far ahead at the end, which is to say Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. It's an open question whether MySpace is going to be able to recover the huge gorilla of the market status it had. It started to integrate across other places. I think the dark horse there has got to be Google. Not very dark. They have a lot of dark fiber, but not necessarily any kind of small imprint. They're increasingly showing exactly how a distributed social network built around your Google ID or email could be built. and depending upon how they work through that, that could be huge. The breakout application, which I actually don't use very much at all, is probably Foursquare. People have gotten excited about that.
I use it.
If you think about it, Win, well, geez, guys at FriendFeed did pretty well. There's a lot of startups and a lot of activity, though, that will probably become more important next year. For now, though, the big three social networks are the winners.
Great, thanks a lot.
Thank you.